It is convention to restrict access to a class so that its member variables can only be accessed from within the class itself. So all member variables are typically created with the private keyword. Try changing public to private to see what happens. So here is a copy of the example we just did. If you remember, we set this to public at the beginning, but sometimes, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, in nearly all cases, you want to set member variables to private and control access to them via methods like deposit or withdraw. Like for this example, there probably wouldn't be any reason for you to directly set the balance. The balance should only be updated via deposit and withdraw. So if I change this to private, this is also slightly complex, but the difference between public and private determines where I can access these variables. When a variable is private, I can only access this variable from within this class. When it's public, I can access it from outside of the class, like I did here. I was able to access this attribute inside the test banking. So if I change the holder to private and I try to compile this, I'll get an error because here it says holder has private access in bank account 2. So when I'm in test banking, I'm not allowed to access the holder attribute and I get an error thrown. So how can we retrieve and update an object's information then? Well, nearly all programming languages have some concept of getters and setters, and this is a universal concept. So the getter gets or returns an attribute. It's a method that typically takes 0 arguments because all you're doing is say, give me this attribute, I want to know the value. The setter sets or updates an attribute, and this method typically takes 1 argument, the value to update the attribute to, and it typically returns void because all it does is it sets the attribute without doing anything else. So let's go back to this example. In this case, I set all member variables to private because I want to strictly control the access to them. So when it's private, now I need to implement my getters and setters. If you're using Eclipse, once you create the member variables at the top, you can actually just auto-generate the getters and setters. Eclipse has a function for that. And here we'll do the getters first. So again, it's a public method without the static part. All getters start with get, and then they're followed with the variable name that you want to get. So if I want to get the holder, I do like this. The holder is a string, so I return a string. Get holder, takes no arguments, and then all I do is return this holder. Right, and this holder first to this holder up here. And then I want to do the same thing for balance. So I want to take in a balance. Oh no, I don't want to take in a balance. I'm just retrieving the balance. Right, and I do the same thing. Return balance. So how do I access these now? These are private. So my method, I can no longer use this dot notation because the attributes are no longer accessible to me outside of the bank account class. So what I do is I do get holder. I call the method to return to me the value of the holder, and the same thing with the balance. And then I'll just paste this over here. Same thing with this here. Oh no, this is balance. Alright, balance. Alright. Okay. So compile. I missed one. Oh, okay, that's because of the, I try to set the holder here. So we'll take this out for now. Okay, and we see we get the same thing, balance after deposit, balance after withdrawal, except this time we use the getters to access the members of my bank account, rather than using the dot notation to access the attributes directly. So once we have the getters, we want to do the same thing and create our setters. So they follow the same convention, except they usually return nothing. You use set, and then the attribute that you want to set, and then you want to take in what you want to update it to. Holder. Okay, so now you'll have a problem with this because I want to set this holder up here to whatever I take in. Of course, I can change this to something like new holder, so I can go down here, new holder. So when I say holder here, it knows I'm talking about this one. But we can use something called the this pointer, and it looks like this. I do this dot holder equals holder. When I say this, it refers to members of the class itself. So when I say this dot holder, the program knows that I'm specifically talking about this holder, the member of the class, and this holder is the argument that I take in. And then I do the same thing for balance. Double. And again, I'll use this pointer so it knows which balance I'm referring to. Okay. So now here, when I want to set the holder, I do this. There you go. I set the holder to Evan. And then let's set a new balance too. Let's set it to 1,000. This is just a get balance. Okay. So now we can try and compile again, and then run. So here we set our new name using the setter, and then we set a new balance with the setter.